Absolute Green Arrow might be the most disturbing comic. It is the most disturbing comic to come out of the Absolute universe so far. It's incredible, but wow. Okay, so for those of you guys joining us for the first time, you're in a good spot because we don't know anything about Absolute Oliver Queen in the DC universe. All we know is that in the Absolute Evil comic, the coming together of basically Absolute Joker and Ra's al Ghul and essentially the villains who run the world, that they had Hawkman kill Oliver. And like, that was it. That's all we know about this guy. So we're all kind of starting off from square one here. And so what this does is this picks up in Star City with Jubal Slade. Now, Jubal Slade was the guy that Oliver was going to go after before he was killed. And this dude was pretty sketchy. But this all takes place after Oliver's death, right? Whoever it is that he's talking to on the phone, and we don't know who he's talking to, but whoever he's talking to, he says, what are they really gonna do, right? Anybody tries anything and they're ending up like Oliver Queen. You saw what Hammond did to him. Now this person responds, and then of course that leads to Jubal answering back, are you kidding? Right, I wanted to watch. It was the least Hammond could do after I gave $300 million to that political action committee of his. Queen took my company. And so that's when he's presumably asked about the new security detail. And he says, yeah, the guards are Hammond's personal stock, totally ex-military, like legit killers who've toppled governments. One of them, in hearing this, takes a sense of pride in it, right? The guy kind of smiles, then immediately dies. He gets shot in the head with an arrow like that. At that point, Jubal's like, what in the hell, right? And like the dying starts, because in that moment, he drops the phone. We don't get to see who it was that he was talking to. He runs out of the room and everyone in the other room is dead. These guys are dead as doornails, right? And it's no small thing either. It's not like it was done with any kindness or compassion. No. It's a bloodbath in there. And in that moment, some guy just calls out to him, right? And he says, Mr. Slade, stay back, because when Jubal looks over, this guy's face is mutating. Now, at first thought, my idea was, oh my God, is this how we end up getting like Absolute Beast Boy or something like that? No, we actually find out what this is later on. So I'm sorry to break hearts. This is not how we get Absolute Beast Boy. It would be kind of dope if we did. But this guy makes a break for it. That's literally all he can do. Like, he just makes a break for it and starts calling out, whoever you are, I will pay whatever you want, right? Just tell me what it is that you want. And that's where Green Arrow appears behind him and just says, an example, and kills this guy on the spot. Now, this is why I say this comic is disturbing. Not this part, what comes next? Because at that moment, we get a news broadcast, right? And they say details are still unreleased concerning the death of billionaire Jubal Slade, a tech entrepreneur best known as the co-founder of the electronic trading platform Green Arrows Trading, which is clearly a real-world stand-in for Robinhood. And there is actually a way to build that bridge. Of course, Robinhood, being the trading platform, gets its name from the mythical character. But with Green Arrow Oliver Queen, there came a point in DC Comics when he was basically billed as a Robin Hood-esque character, and that was a name you would see him referred to occasionally within DC Comics. So that's how you kind of get this bridge between the two. But the news segment continues on, right? Jubal Slade made headlines after his public feud with Green Arrow's co-founder, Oliver Queen, leading Slade to leave the billion-dollar company. He most recently became the subject of controversy after numerous allegations of SA resurfaced. And that's where you have another guy, right, chiming in on all this. I'll probably get shadow banned again, but is anybody else sick of corporate media talking about Jubal Slade's allegations of misconduct? Like, multiple women accused him of SA, not including rumors that he was trafficking. Now, that's the thing that we actually learn in Absolute Evil, that Jubal Slade was effectively Epstein in the Absolute universe. And so that's why just the general public's response is like, yeah, we're not really sad about this guy being made to take a short drop with a sudden stop, because you have another girl who gets on here, right? That face when a local human trafficker with multiple allegations gets unalived and you're supposed to feel bad. The internet's making memes out of it, right? And again, that's Oliver Queen, co-founder of Green Arrows Trading, the stock app. His recent murder was unsolved, and now, less than a year later, his ex-partner is murdered too. Guys, we really don't think there's a bigger story here, right? So this leads to the conspiracy theorists coming out. As with any social media platform, commentators just hopping on trends, writing it till the wheels fall off, and then moving on to the next one. And so at this point, we switch over to a woman who anyone that's familiar with Green Arrow is going to immediately recognize. But I will say, in this story, she's more badass than she's ever been in DC Comics, right? So we get this commentary, or kind of monologue, right? She says, this study in Berkeley found that making people think about money by just innocently sitting them near a screensaver showing dollar bills had an antisocial effect. It made them less invested when helping an assistant who dropped things near them. Another study shows people primed to think of themselves as upper class are more likely to take candy from a jar labeled for kids, more likely to take candy from babies. Essentially, money corrupts. Right? But what matters here is she's working as a bodyguard. And then there's some crazed fan here who pushes her out of the way and is like, you're standing in the way. So of course, she turns around and helps this guy understand his place in the bigger picture by giving him a haymaker, which ultimately gets her suspended from her job. And so that's when you find out she's talking to a therapist here. But she's not talking to just any therapist, she's talking to Dr. Annie Green. Now, Dr. Annie Green is OG in DC Comics. She goes all the way back to the 80s. When she was really young, she endured her own horrific experience. She was kidnapped, she was tortured. This was back during the era in the Green Arrow comics when you often saw a lot of the stories dealing with real-world tangible events. It's one of the things that made Green Arrow so iconic from the Dennis O'Neil, Neil Adams run going forward for a number of years in DC, right? Snowbirds Don't Fly, when it turned out that Roy Harper was taking drugs, different things like that, right? And that's what's going on here. So you can easily see why this comic is so dark and probably the best depiction of the Absolute Universe so far, because we end up learning this woman is Dinah. This is Dinah Lance. It's Black Canary. And the conversation between the two, much like it was in the main DC universe when Dr. Green served as the therapist to Black Canary, that whole aspect being carried over here in the new universe, Dinah Lance just kind of says, I guess the pop stars like me, right? Sort of making fun at her own situation. It's the way in which she deals with her trauma. And Annie's just kind of like, it'd be easy to find out if she did. You know, like you said that you're allowed to talk to your clients, to share your thoughts, and Dinah just kind of brushes it off. She doesn't really want to have anything to do with it. But it's not because of the fact that she's antisocial or anything like that. There's actually a motivation behind it. Because Annie says, last time we talked about how all of this might be connected to what happened to your mother. And that's where Dinah cuts her off and just says, do you want to know my thoughts? I read online about this professor who studied neuroscience. He found having more money tends to suppress the mirror neuron system, the part of our brain that allows us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, to empathize. And why should they? The rich always get what they want. So when I work for the obnoxiously loaded ones, I try not to care too. I just shut up and do my job. She's so disconnected from the people she protects because the concern is that if she started to care about them, she would become one of them. And that's what's so interesting here, right? It's a whole different take on how her character operates. Historically, in the main DC universe, she was a vigilante who came from a family of cops, right? Taking the law into her own hands, modeling herself after her mother, because she's the second Black Canary. Her mom was the first. We don't know if that's the case here in this new Absolute Universe, but still, Annie asks her, does it make you angry that you cannot do more? And the response of Dinah, I'm just tired. I'm just tired of it all. Right? Like, I'm tired of seeing the ultra wealthy and the ultra powerful get everything they want to while everybody else is just made to suffer. And Annie says in the last session, you used the word numb. And Dinah says, sure. Numb is a good word. And so at that point, Annie tells her, you know, if you hate your work, you can quit, but it's never that simple, right? And in fact, Dinah says that, right? Like, in this economy, sure, let me just quit my job and just go find some money off the money tree in the backyard. And Annie asks her, is it worth being miserable, right? You said that you made decent money as an MMA fighter. And while that does seem to be true and also seems to be really dope, that Black Canary was an MMA fighter, to be honest with you guys, she just looks over off to the side and just says, not decent enough, right? And that's when you find out that Larry Lance, her father, is struggling because Annie asks, right, how's your father doing? And Dinah just says he's taking to the new meds, right? Insurance barely covers half though, but we save with me living at home again. And seemingly, she takes all the money that she makes and puts it towards whatever other care insurance doesn't cover for her father. And she says the bodyguard gig pays well, right? This world's got a ton of rich jerks, so I just suck it up and I do it all for dad. Of course, now I'm suspended, but there's this sister firm offering me some special assignment, and I have no idea what it is. But I guess we'll find out when I meet this Malcolm Merlyn guy. Now, historically speaking, in the main DC universe, Malcolm Merlyn is Dark Archer, right? And this guy is like the main foe of Oliver Queen. So it's actually kind of cool the way that he's presented here, because when Dinah shows up to his office, he says, "Your file says that you are former Star City Police turned rising MMA fighter. No doubt you lasted longer than 16 or 17 seconds. Dinah Black Canary Lance turned executive protection specialist." Quite the path. And so she's given a dossier, essentially. And she's like, "Mr. Merlyn, you want me protecting him? I got suspended guarding a pop star." And he just tells her, "Miss Lance, did you talk to Oliver Queen before he died? Or Jubal Slade?" And she asked the question, right, "I haven't talked to either since we were neighbors." But as for this guy that she's protecting, right, this comes off her comment about her basically being offered a job at a sister firm. And she says apparently the promotion that this sister firm is offering is to protect one of America's most loathed men. Tyler Pharmaceuticals made billions covering up the highly addictive nature of their opioid-based meds, resulting in 1 million deaths and 5 times as many addictions, until a class action lawsuit. But CEO Reese Tyler filed for bankruptcy, letting his billionaire friend Hector Hammond buy out his assets and install Tyler as the new head of Hammond Pharmaceuticals. Tyler avoided a settlement and profited off the lawsuit. The rich were bailing out the rich. And so as far as this question goes, has she talked to Jubal Slade or Oliver Queen before they died? She actually gives us a little bit of a flashback here. It jumps back 8 years before all of this started, when she was basically sleeping with Oliver Queen. And in this conversation that they're having in bed, he says, "Did you know if 1% of Americans want a bill passed, there's a 30% chance Congress will pass it? And if 0% want a bill passed, there's still a 30% chance that Congress will pass it." And Dinah says, because there's no cap on how much corporations can spend on lobbyists or election influence, which Oliver Queen was going to say, which seemingly this is something that he said repeatedly. So she just kind of learned it all, or maybe she already knew, right? But she says, Ollie moved into the apartment next door. He was an annoying, self-righteous loudmouth who wouldn't shut up. We were dating within a month. But at that point, Jubal Slade walks in. Now keep in mind, Jubal Slade ended up becoming this Epstein-type guy, but 8 years before all of that, he was not that guy, right? Literally, he comes in and he just says, "I didn't see anything, dude. Like, I promise, I didn't see anything," right? And that's where Ollie's just like, "Dude, you gotta learn to knock, man. You can't just bust into people's rooms like that." But he tells Ollie, right? Like, "I think I've got a prototype of the app." And Ollie's like, "Already? Dope." And that's when he starts to fill in Dinah about it. He's like, "I told you about my green arrows, right? It's my idea, but Jubal is the coding mastermind. It's an easy to navigate stock trading app that does not charge fees the way online brokers do. And if we can add no account minimums, it could democratize trading." And so at that point, Jubal's just like, "Okay, like, I'll let you guys get back to your exercise. Don't worry, I won't listen to anything," right? Put in headphones or something like that. But the funny thing about it is Dinah's like, "Dude, that guy needs to go out more, man. Like, you need to help that guy get a girl." And Ollie's just kind of like, "I mean, I've tried," right? He just stares at girls at parties, then comes home angry that they don't talk to him. It's like, well, that's gonna happen. Like, look, I'm sorry, but the dude making the first move, that apple cart is never going to get upset, right? You are gonna have to do that. Put on your big kid pants, accept that that's how the game gets played, and go play it, and go get laid. Like, I wouldn't know what to tell Jubal, right? I wouldn't know what to tell him, right? I would just be like, "Look, man, just sit around and be miserable." I don't know. But in the face of that, Dinah's just like, "So you're gonna start a business with this guy, right? This dude who's probably never seen boobs once in his life, you're gonna start a business with him? Like, that's probably not a very good idea." But Ollie does go to bat for him, right? He says, "We've been roommates since college. He's harmless, but this app, right, it could give regular people better access to money. And that's how real change starts, working the system, because redistributing wealth means redistributing power." And that's an accurate statement, right? Real change starts with money. It sucks, but that's the way the world works. And so that's what Dinah says, right? Ollie and me wanted to make a difference in the world, and Oliver did, right? He raised the financing for Jubal's app. He was always able to convince people to take a chance. The Green Arrows trading app launched to over 250,000 signups within its first month. People hungry for a cheaper way to invest. Of course, by that point, I was long gone, having caught Oliver cheating on me, because of course he was. 10 million users later, Oliver and Jubal had transformed the online brokerage industry and became billionaires. Ollie branded his logo, those green arrows, on everything, becoming the operation's handsome face, which probably just made it easier to push Jubal out after the allegations began to roll in, because Ollie was still trying to do the right thing. So seemingly by this point in time, right, as these 8 years have passed, that's when Jubal started using his money and resources to essentially become Epstein, right, the guy currying favor for the wealthy and the powerful. And so Dinah says, a few months ago, Oliver's dead body washed up on shore, his head bashed in. It was rumored that he was attacked on his yacht, but nobody really knew. I inhaled every online theory. You do that when your ex-boyfriend is a murdered billionaire, because once upon a time, I knew Oliver Queen better than he knew himself, that despite his many, many flaws, he'd always be a good man trying to fight the good fight. Now again, that's when we kind of pick up with everything happening in the comic book. Killed an absolute evil, and that's it. And so in saying all of this, and initially coming off that conversation with Malcolm Merlyn, she asked Malcolm, right, this job's related to Jubal's murder. The rich and the powerful are scared. They felt untouchable until someone touched them, and now they're terrified. And so that's where Malcolm says, we want to increase the protection detail around Tyler and my boss. And so that's when Dinah asks, right, your boss, Hector Hammond? That's your boss? Like, why does he think this killer is targeting him? And the response of Malcolm Merlyn, that's not our job, right? It is not our job to ask questions. It's our job to provide protection. The principal thinks that they are in danger. We protect, no matter what happens and what that danger is. And he says, we've combed through every executive protection specialist in our extended network, looking for anyone with law enforcement experience to not just protect the client, but find this killer. So you're doing double duty, right? You're serving as protection, but you're also launching your own investigation. You were suggested, not only because you were police, but because you knew Queen and Jubal Slade. And so that's when she starts to pick up the pieces. She's like, okay, and you think their deaths are related. Whoever it was that killed Oliver killed Slade because they were both extremely powerful men. Now, we know that's not true, but they don't know that's not true. And so that's when she's told, swipe to the next image on your tablet. And this is gruesome. So he tells her, right, police responders found Jubal Slade's murdered body tied up in his penthouse, riddled with cuts and impaled with 2 green arrows, the logo of his former company. In addition, his eyes were repeatedly stabbed, his fingers removed, with similar damage done to his parts down there. All the body parts that Jubal allegedly wouldn't keep off women under a certain age. And that's where Dinah's just like, holy shit. Right? Like these other files, names attached to these photos, who were they? And that's when we end up getting Roy Harper, Mia Dearden, Tom Holloway. Now, she's told there are lists of suspects that their team put together, but historically speaking, in the main DC universe, they were allies of Oliver Queen. Roy Harper was the first Speedy and Red Arrow. Mia Dearden became the next one. Tom Halliday is actually a character called the Spider. He comes from a company called Quality Comics back in the 40s. They went belly up in the 50s when A&C went belly up in 1956. Do you guys know who else Quality Comics made? Quicksilver. But you guys don't call him Quicksilver. You call him Max Mercury in the Flash comics. But the point is, right, she's told, these are a list of suspects that my team threw together, a work in progress. The details just leaked this morning with some social media accounts already celebrating it. And Dinah's kind of flabbergasted. Social media celebrating torture? And Malcolm just tells her, right, a trove of leaked emails also hit the internet. It details 26 accounts of SA that Slade was never held accountable for, but Reese Tyler's guilty of none of that. So you have to help us protect him. And so she just kind of mulls this all over, right? A man who lied to profit off millions of addictions and deaths. Are these our options now, right? Ignore the monsters that we work for or throw watch parties for their executions. And so she just says, I can't, right? I cannot do this. I cannot in good conscience take this job. But in that moment, Hector Hammond and Reese Tyler walk in. And Reese just says, right, me and Hector wanted to come down and see how the task force was doing. Is that Dinah Lance? Like, the Dinah Lance? Like, her reputation seemingly precedes her. And he says, did Hector tell you that I found her in these files myself? Oliver Queen's ex-police officer girlfriend is a professional bodyguard, while we have a problem with Green Arrow's obsessed stalker. It's kind of kismet, right? It's almost like fate. And she says, actually, I cannot take the assignment. My dad's sick. And ultimately, Hector's like, what? Right? This is a man who is not used to be told no. And so in that moment, he says, Malcolm, why don't you hand me your tablet? Right? And that's when Hector starts going over it all. And he says, so you became a bodyguard to help pay for your father's doctor bills, which she didn't even know that was in her file. And he's like, no talking. The grown-ups are talking right now. And he says, I'm guessing insurance covers only half of your father's bills. It's never enough, is it? But if you work for us, he'll never have to worry again. And she asks, she's like, really? And he says, except, oh no, Daddy just lost all his coverage. He can't pay for anything now. Hector Hammond deleted the guy's health insurance just to force his daughter to work for him. How sketchy could you possibly be? And she's like, why would you do that? And he's like, go home, doll. Go home and check. Make sure that we actually did what I said that we would do. Then take a selfie of your stupid pig face so you remember what a brain-dead cow looks like when she refuses kind people making generous offers, and show up on Monday and be grateful that we are even paying you. And so when she gets home, she's there with her father. And that's when she gives us this tragic monologue where she says, Dad shook when he told me his insurance was canceled because he knew that I took the job protecting people who hated him, right? My father's third-generation police. Being a cop is so in his blood. He married one too. I've never seen him so much as tremble, not even after we learned everything Mom did, because too many wanted to watch him suffer, and us Lances do not dole out that kind of satisfaction. He doesn't believe me when I say that it's my fault, because he grew up believing what all good dads believe, that his only job is to make things easier for his kid. And if my life's harder because of him, then he failed in his only real responsibility. And all he wants is for his daughter not to see him cry. And so at that point, this is when we pick up with all hell breaking loose. Because Dinah says, right, I have to find a way out of this job as fast as humanly possible because these guys are insane. She says for months, they've been trying to crack the security of Oliver's doomsday bunker, his arrow cave. And on my first day, that's exactly what we're doing. They end up walking into the quiver, but there's something here that Hector Hammond wants. Seemingly, we don't know what it is, but it is something important to him. And she says, whatever the hell they thought Ollie was hiding here, it's important enough for them both to personally come and look for it. We damaged the power lines breaking in. Fortunately, these idiots brought enough of their trained killers / bodyguards to keep them safe. But in that moment, they start activating booby traps and arrows start firing off all over the place. And in fact, Dinah actually ends up snatching one out of thin air when it almost hits Reese Tyler. And then of course she snaps it in half. But then they also realize what's going on because another guy had been hit by an arrow and he starts to mutate because the arrows are poisoned. That's what happened to the first guy at the beginning of the comic. Not only that, an arrow comes flying in with a grenade, hits a car and explodes and sends everybody flying. And in that moment, Green Arrow shows up here looking more dope than I think anyone I have ever seen in the Absolute Universe, right? I mean, he looks incredible. He's just like emblazoned with flames, right? Standing there like death incarnate, right? Like you see this and you immediately know your lifespan has just been cut down to minutes, right? I mean, it's full on menacing, right? And so Dinah just tells herself, right? Like you get up, right? You have to get up. You have to protect these guys. But in that moment, immediately, Green Arrow runs up on Hector Hammond after having killed all the guys around him. And the whole time he's killing these bodyguards, Dinah's watching him, right? His form, his speed. Who the hell fights like this? What the hell is he? Right, this guy cannot be human. And so in that moment, Green Arrow finally catches up to Hector and says, you know what you did. Oliver Queen, right? You had him killed. But Hector just says, that wasn't me, right? I didn't kill him. It was Carter. But Green Arrow has no concern. He cuts off Hector Hammond's hand right in that moment. It says, it doesn't matter. It's time you all finally face the consequences. And so in that moment, Dinah ends up grabbing her handgun, firing off at Green Arrow, who leaves. Now that's a telltale sign of what's going on here. He mowed through every single one of these bodyguards. Why would one more make any difference? The fact that he takes off tells us that on some level, he knows who Dinah is. So somehow he's associated with Oliver Queen. I know there's a lot of theories out there Please don't spoil it down in the comment section, although I know some of you guys might, but there's theories abound out there as to who Absolute Green Arrow actually is. And so once he bails out, right, Dinah just says, how the hell does this Green Arrow factor in to what happened with Oliver Queen being killed? Because it's the first time she's seeing him. There was no evidence to show who this guy was or what was going on. And so she says, and does Hector Hammond know? Right, Malcolm's list of suspects, Harper, Dearden, Holloway, is one of them Green Arrow? Are none of them Green Arrow, right? Who is this guy? And she says, but I don't know what's more disturbing. Watching Hammond scream as he stares at his bloody stump of an arm after a killer's just threatened to hack him into pieces, or knowing I'm smiling watching this monster suffer. And so you pick up a little while later, and she says, after the fire and after Hammond's rush to the hospital, Malcolm Merlin and I scour what's left for clues. I think about how Ollie would react to someone killing in his name with his symbol, because I still remember all our talks about changing things from within and doing the right thing. But that's when they realize one of these walls is a fake wall. And Malcolm just says the explosion must have jarred it loose. And so she says, residue showed no one's accessed the opening in months, which means this must be what Hammond was looking for, the secret that Ollie hid, the man who'd always tried to do the right thing by working the system. We'd later verify the boy's body had clearly been dead for a while, although somehow not decomposed, because when they get in there and they flip the body over, it's this kid's corpse covered in eyeballs, literally eyes in his body. And she says, if only that was the strangest part, because she finds herself asking the question, what in the world Oliver Queen was up to? Having said that, all you hardcore DC aficionados, I have no clue who this kid is. No clue who this kid is, right? I know way more about Marvel than I do about DC. So if you guys are huge DC fans, post comments down below and tell me who this kid is. I'm reaching out to you guys for once, right? Someone fill me in. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.